Good morning. How are we doing? Wow, 41 people on. Holy moly. That is incredible. I have not ever walked in front of the camera before and seen 41 people on. That is really cool. Looks like a lot of people are on this morning. So, good morning, folks. Mike C. Clinton here. Let me get my paperwork. I'm kind of working the camera angles today, a little bit different than normal. As you can see, the angle is very wide because we're talking about distance consideration and close quarter position. So I'm not sure if you've met him or not. This is my buddy Bob. Bob is a little bit of an introvert, so he doesn't talk very much, but he's going to help out this morning. So let me jump right into it and be as efficient as I possibly can. Happy Wednesday morning. Good morning. My name is Mike C. Clanner, and today's live stream will cover the context of distance and understanding a few things. Number one, I want to talk to you just a little bit about when to draw, potentially, if you have to draw your defensive handgun. And this is applicable, I think, across the board for civilians or police officers or maybe members of the military, U.S. military, if you're carrying concealed or doing some sort of deep cover type mission. But it's applicable, I think, to everybody. And then we're going to talk about the three primary gun positions: the extended gun position and what distance you should use that from, the close quarter shooting position, what you can use that from, and then what I call the extreme close quarter position. And I'm also going to tell you or teach you a way you can flow from one position to the other, for example. Of course, as always, safety first, no live weapons. So let me get my table a little closer here so I can manage this a little bit better. Whatever you have on here, make sure it's safe and clear. I actually have a Glock 19. This is one that's done up by Wilson Combat, converted with a cool fire trainer, so you can see my little cool fire red barrel in the gun, and I've got it filled with compressed CO2, so when I shoot, I can actually do this. Whoa, check that out. Pretty cool, huh? And of course, I can see my orange dummy tab in there. I got a bunch of people on this morning. I know I got some coin members on, got some ACSS members on. I think I just had a question pop up from Rich, which, by the way, folks, as I'm teaching this, because I'm going to be farther from the camera as I teach, please be patient and wait till I'm close. I'm not sure if it's my age. I have really good distance vision, but I still can't read your very small questions because they kind of pop up on the upper side of the screen that I'm using. But Rich, they don't have the competition line on their website yet, but you can call them or email them and place an order or whatever else. They're adding the stuff on the website, I think, in the next couple weeks or so. I have one of these. Rich is talking about this. I showed this on Instagram the other day, and my clip-on pouch is my IDPA rig, which is probably one of the slickest and fastest holsters I've ever owned. So really good company, precisionholsters.com. Rich, you can just drop them an email. Anyways, got my cool fire trainer in a Precision Holsters Ultra Appendix inside the waistband holster. By the way, Precision Holsters is a sponsor of mine in terms of a podcast sponsor. They sponsor my podcast. But as with all of the podcast sponsors or any of the other sponsors, I don't wear or use gear that I don't believe in, okay? For those of you that are new, a shout out to you new viewers. Good morning. Do me a favor if you're a new viewer. I would love to have you type in new on your phone or your computer or whatever you're watching on, and then tell me where you're from. So it would be like new Buffalo, Wyoming if you're new. So let me know where you're from. Coin members, put up the coin number there. Mine's on my forearm. Shout out to you coin members. If you're a coin member, you know who you are. Those of you that don't know what a coin member is, you can ask that question. I'm sure people in the live stream will tell you what that is. Shout out with your coin number, put it up there. And hey, Gilly, I see Gilly. I bet we have a bunch of new people on. We have 72 people on. I'm going to hit 100 easy this morning. This is awesome. And also for all of you, as always, I ask this every time because this is a good social media protocol. Please share it to the groups. Training Addicts group, put it on your Glock groups, put it on all the groups you're members of. Let them know we're on. We're talking about something important, okay? All right, so if you want to learn more about me, if you're one of these new viewers, you can go to my primary website, shooting-performance.com, or you can go to mikecclanner.com and you can learn all about that. Don't forget, this is a fundamental program, although this is the last live stream in the defensive handgun cycle. And exciting news, next week we're going to defensive rifles. We're going to get the ARs and the slings and the lights and all the cool rifle stuff out next week. I'm going to show you my home defense rifle. I'm going to bring a suppressor on the show and show you some of the suppressors that I have and stuff like that. So next week on Wednesday, mark your calendar. Of course, that'll be listed in events. But this is the last one in the defensive handgun cycle, but this is an important one. So if you want to share it, please let people know, because I think this is the one that gets people in trouble a lot, is not understanding distance. And I see you, Mary, from New Tolland, Connecticut. Good morning. And that's it, folks. Two more reminders. Join the Shooting Performance Training Addicts group. Go to Facebook and search Shooting Performance Training Addicts. Request entry, and I'll approve you automatically as long as you're an upstanding citizen and you don't cause any problems. That's where I put all the announcements and the events. Also do some Q&A there. And other than my podcast, if you are watching this and you're wondering about some sort of more advanced concept, or you want to ask a question about something that something that maybe I didn't specifically cover, of course, ask those questions today. I'll try to address them as quickly as I possibly can. But more importantly, understand that the 4 or 5 fundamental videos are simply the fundamental beginnings or pieces of the puzzle, and the rest of the program is in the defensive handgun training program. I've got the defensive handgun training drills right here, which you can get a free copy if you pay the shipping and printing cost. If you go to MikeCClender.com, but there's a full 300-page. This is like only 100 pages of the drills that take the range, but there's a 300-page book that covers all of the defensive handgun training program. It's a full 3-phase program. So if you're wondering about the more advanced stuff, or how to follow on, or what training program to follow, you got to check that out. Okay. Grab your unloaded firearm. By the way, this is Cool Fire Trainer. You can check them out at coolfiretrainer.com/CClender. And if you want to know what holster, the defensive stuff I'm wearing right now, if you go to precisionholsters.com/CClender, you'll see a picture of me and all my gear. It lists all my gear. Good morning, Julio Salado. Good morning. I see you jumping on. All right. So let's talk about distance consideration. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to kind of bear with me in terms of the distance. I'm in this is an office-sized room. It's wide enough where I'm going to be able to demonstrate most of what's going on. I'm going to talk as loud as I can, so hopefully you can hear me well. But what I want you to understand that when I start showing the distance between Bob and maybe, I can get a certain distance off the camera, but if I go too far, I'll run into that wall. So I'm going to kind of be describing what I mean by the distance, and you're going to have to bear with me just a little bit, okay? So number one thing that I want to cover is, if you're carrying a concealed handgun and or a handgun that's not concealed in a duty type holster, in order to draw the handgun and use it, we need a certain amount of time, right? So that time is dictated by how you carry the handgun, your skill level, the things that are going on, the environment, the weather conditions. All of these things affect how fast you can draw the handgun. So for example, in perfect condition with a t-shirt, in an air-conditioned room, I can sweep and grip and draw the handgun out very fast. But if it was, if I were outside and it was a cold fall day and it was raining and my shirt was wet, it was kind of sticking to my body, I may fight with the garment to get the handgun out for a second, right? So the circumstances will dictate how fast I can get the handgun out. But no matter what, I need a chunk of time to get the gun out. So if, for example, and there's going to be a little bit of what I call Bob management today, because unfortunately Bob, bless his heart, won't walk closer to me when I'm doing the instruction. I have to move him around, so bear with me during my Bob management. If I'm too close to the threat when I draw the handgun, and I haven't taken into consideration the distance and the time required for me to draw, I may begin my draw process only to have it fouled by my opponent, right? To have someone grab the handgun, punch me in the face, tackle me, or whatever else. And best case scenario there, if I'm well trained, is now we're fighting over my handgun. And the problem with fighting over my handgun is, now instead of me having 2 hands to strike, I only have 1 hand to strike, because the other hand is going to be protecting the handgun. Now, I know you may be saying, well, Mike, you could very easily draw and shoot Bob. But here's the reality. Handgun caliber bullets, 9mm, whatever you're carrying, may be effective if you have good shot placement and you get multiple hits on the target, right? Think about that for a second. But none of these handgun calibers, when you shoot someone, boom, cause them to woo fly into the distance, right? It's not like TV. You're not going to shoot someone and they're going to go crashing through the wall or crashing through the window. So understand that even if I got my handgun out and we were fighting over my handgun and Bob is trying to follow my draw process and grab it and I fire a shot and I get a hit, that doesn't necessarily stop that fight. Matter of fact, if you look at historically police fights, gunfights, you can look at YouTube, you can look at LiveLeak, you can pretty easily find lots and lots of videos of people getting shot. And a lot of times they just, they take the impact, they say ow, they do stupid stuff, but they don't fly away, they don't drop right away. So even if I get a hit on target, that doesn't mean it's going to solve a problem. Though that's the best case. The worst case, if I draw it too close, where Bob can follow my draw, is somehow he gets my gun away from me. So he takes my gun, right? And here's the deal. Rule number one in a fight is don't give your gun to someone else because you can't effectively fight with your gun anymore, right? So he gets my gun. Really, really bad. Maybe medium is my gun ends up in the fray, the fouled up tangle on the ground somewhere. So now I'm fighting with my opponent and we're both thinking, hey, who's going to get to the gun first, right? So my point there is, as shooters, we tend to train draw the handgun, right? Draw the handgun, draw the handgun, draw the handgun. That's what we think because we're armed with a gun and we have a viable threat. But what you need to understand and you need to train the act of creating distance or understanding that you need a certain amount of time to draw the handgun before you access it, right? You have to, as John Correa says, he has a great YouTube channel, you have to wait your turn, right? So what does your turn require? Well, it requires one of three things. Obviously, that it equals or equates to time. Number one, I need distance, right? If I have enough distance from my opponent, that gives me time to draw the handgun because it takes him more time to close that distance. Number one. Number two, I need maybe an obstacle. Like I have a table here, you can't see it. Maybe a picnic table. Maybe I get on the other side of a car. Maybe I get on the other side of a, those cart racks in Walmart. So now I've created that time gap with an obstacle between me and my opponent. So I have time to draw the handgun. Or maybe three, I use some sort of combatives. Remember, I'm trying to buy some time. So if I came in here and went boom, 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 and he went boom, boom, his reaction, his response to that is being off balance for a couple seconds. I just bought myself some time. And then number four, this is kind of the bonus one. Number four might be some sort of sneakiness. Like when I teach the concealed carry draw process, some of you that have done this with me live stream, we practice three positions where we draw from here, maybe we draw from here, and then the third one is what I call the cheater position, where I start to actually access the garment. I get my hand inside the garment, so this makes my draw process that much faster because I don't have to reach down and grab the shirt. But you could also be in a position, maybe you're in a vehicle, maybe you're behind an obstacle where they can't see things, and the next thing you know, you get the gun in a position where it's already accessible, right? Boom, and you can very, very quickly use it. I call that sneakiness. It's more of a tactic than a technique. It's something that you have to understand to be able to utilize, okay? So just understand that those things quick. So to the context, before you draw your handgun, I want you to start to visualize and train in a manner where you have distance, you have an obstacle, you use combatives, or you use some sort of sneaky technique. Well, how do you train that? Here's the deal. When you're practicing on your range, here's what I would consider. I would consider working your standard draw process, like where you're literally just drawing and shooting your handgun. And by the way, that's a Cool 5 trainer for those that just jumped on. It cycles the slide. No, I am not shooting holes in my wall. That'd be a good April Fool's joke, right? But you set the target up at an appropriate distance where it simulates, I was going to say simulates the distance where you would actually access a firearm. So I would set that target up at 5 yards or beyond, right? If you set the target up closer than 5 yards, let's say maybe you set your target up at 3 yards. Well, in that case, then I would practice maybe some aggressive movements where you move and then you draw the handgun. Or maybe even closer. So let's say you set a target up at 3 yards. You do an aggressive offline to the right, you draw your handgun and shoot. You do an aggressive offline to the left, you draw your handgun and shoot. And then maybe you set a target up at 1 or 2 yards. So I would take that Bob target. And by the way, I do shoot on Bob. These are made by Century Martial Arts, the Bob XL. I strike Bob, I stab Bob, and I also shoot Bob. So believe it or not, you can buy one of these if you can afford it. And they're not very pricey. They're great tools. But I know a lot of people wouldn't shoot them. But they're probably the single best target you could practice on in terms of firearms because you get a true 3D effect. The ones I have at the range, I've shot probably up to 1,000 times by now. The bullet, I mean, it's just a good plastic. The bullet goes right through and doesn't actually destroy the target. So just so you know. But what I also set up is I set up Bob on the range, and I set him up at a distance where I need to strike boom, boom, and I strike a few times, and then I access the firearm and shoot, okay? So what I do there is I set up the distances or simulate distances that are real and appropriate to get me, or you if you're doing this, out of the habit of constantly draw when you're too close to someone to draw the handgun, if that makes any sense. So set up your training appropriate, okay? So let's talk about distance, right? And by the way, if you're wondering what distance should I have at a minimum where I could effectively get my gun out? And a lot of people will reference, you know, the Tueler drill, you know, 21 feet. And what happened is, you know, a long time ago, and it's not a definitive rule, don't think of it like that, but an individual did some testing, police officer did some testing, Mr. Tueler, and he wanted to find out how far an average person could run, you know, in about the same time frame that someone took to draw a handgun and fire a shot, right? And that translated to about 7 yards, about 21 feet. That doesn't necessarily mean that if anybody closed the distance inside 21 feet, you can automatically shoot them, draw them, shoot them. What it means is you need to understand that if you don't have, you know, 5, 6 yards of distance, 7 yards of distance, for most of you that are really skilled, you probably want to effectively get the handgun out and have time to truly affect someone if they're charging you or they're really motivated or they're really aggressive. Now, if they're not running, you know, and you have 5 yards away and you can get your hand on the inside part of the garment, and when you finally decide to draw, you know, you just sweep and grip and pull the handgun out. Certainly, you can do that. But all of those things come into consideration. And so Caesar asked, Caesar's a police officer, how much distance do you need if you open carry? And the answer is, once again, it depends, Caesar. What kind of holster are you open carrying with? How skilled are you with that holster? What are the environmental considerations you're going to need with that open holster? And I would tell you, my distance, like the corner of the room over there, is a little less than 5 yards. If it's closer than that, I would caution you in automatically drawing unless you're using a cheater technique. Maybe with an open carry holster with a police officer, you've already accessed that holster and you've defeated your locking system. But once again, it's like there's pros and cons to everything. There are two sides of that coin. You've defeated your locking system, which also means if this dude charges and you don't get the gun out and you have to defend yourself or defend the gun, now you're defending the gun in a system that's not locked down. Which is why I like, you know, the Safariland ALS, I don't think I have it here, the Safariland ALS holster, lockable holster, or whatever else, right? So, Caesar, I would tell you, if you don't have 5 yards distance at least, or an obstacle, or something else in your environment that's going to slow that person down, if they're motivated to get to you, they can probably get to you before you can draw the handgun, right? One of the things we see on videos a lot is people that get really static or stuck to the ground. You know, I've seen multiple videos of knife-wielding suspects where they're charging, they're trying to cut, and police officers get caught off balance moving like this because we're taught or we think, hey, never, ever, ever turn your back. And I agree in most cases, never, ever, ever turn your back. But if I have to out-sprint someone sprinting at me and I'm sprinting to the rear, I'm never going to win that sprint. If I was moving, I'm never going to be able to out-sprint you moving to the rear when you're moving forward. So I need to run at an angle, right? Or I need to literally turn and run. So don't be afraid. Don't let your feet get stuck on the ground. It's a fight. It's a dynamic fight that moving and all these things are going on at the same time. Okay? All right, so let's talk about distance consideration. In terms of where Bob is right now, I am, let me get at the kind of the extreme distance of the camera. Right now, I'm in a position where I can fully extend my handgun and be in a two-handed shooting position. Right? So I can shoot Bob in the chest or the head from this position. I am far enough away where, and you may not be able to tell, but I'm far enough away, this is position one, where Bob can still take a big step, right? He can reach out and he still can't get to my gun. I'm not sure if you can tell on camera. If I am any closer than that, so for example, now, if Bob has long arms, if he reached out, took a big step and reached toward my handgun, he can absolutely get his hand on my handgun. As I close that distance, I transition to the next position. So I'm transitioning to a close quarter position, right? Now, a couple things about the close quarter position. If I want to use this position, I always tell my students, the muzzle doesn't go up, the muzzle doesn't go down, unless I have a good reason for the muzzle to be up or down. As you can see, the problem with the muzzle up position, I see a lot of people practicing this in the range, boom, boom. They're going boom, and they're trying to drive that front sight straight to the center of the target, and I get that from a shooting perspective, but the problem is I can't necessarily shoot effectively or fight effectively. So my rule with close quarter positions is if I can't shoot from it or fight from it, I don't necessarily like it. I can't shoot you from this position, and I can't really effectively fight from this position. I might be able to throw a muzzle strike, but that's about it. So my close quarter position is where I actually take the handgun, I retract it directly to my chest. Now you want to pay attention here that you have enough distance where when you fire the gun, the slide travels, right? So the slide actually cycles. If you're too close to your body, the slide can actually hit your chest. And what happens is when you get too close to your chest, you actually break your wrist ends. See how my wrists are very compromised? So I want to be as close as I can. There's a little bit of a cant in my firearm because I want to keep my full grip on the handgun. I don't want my hands to come apart like this. Because this is, if I build this position, this is a shooting position as well. Boom. So I get nice and close. Now notice when I did this, I didn't do this. I don't want to back up because you're in a fight, right? Think about that for a second. If you're using a close quarter position and you need to retract to something other than a fully extended position, that's how I felt at my cool fire trainer, by the way. If you need to retract, you're in a fight, and there's a pretty good chance that this individual is closing the distance. So I want to be in a position where I can retract the handgun and fire from that position, but I'm prepared to rotate into a closer position and start to keep them off me with this lead hand. Now, someone earlier commented, just fire a few shots. Here's the deal. With all of these shooting positions, you're going to fire when it's appropriate to fire. But please don't make the assumption, and I talked about this in the beginning of the video, that when you fire those shots, if he starts running at me and I fire a shot, that he's going to burst into a ball of flame, because he's not. He may not stop at all. This may have no effect on this individual, which is why I'm teaching you to transition from this position, where when he gets too close, to this position, where I can also shoot from. And then if he continues to get too close, I'm going to roll the hand off the handgun and transition to another position that allows me to fight, do what I call the stiff arm, which, man, it sounds so simple and almost gimmicky, but it's incredibly effective in keeping someone off your body and off your gun. And then shooting even closer to a protected position where you start to get the arm up in front of your face or up on your head, and you can create a little bit of distance by putting your elbow into the center chest of the person, okay? Now, for example, in some of my classes, we talk about these positions and then we shoot from them. It's literally a matter of practicing a fully extended position, when it's appropriate to move to a compressed position, be able to fire from there, and then when it's appropriate to move to an extreme close quarter position. You're right. Here's how I put this into context. Now, you're going to have to bear with me because Bob can't move. But you could very easily practice this. And by the way, if you're in a training academy or you're a police officer, you're a civilian, you have a partner that trains with you on a regular basis, you could very easily do this drill. With a safe and serviceable block, pistol, like a plastic pistol, maybe a converted cool fire trainer with the grip mark so you know for a fact that it's a training pistol, or maybe a live firearm with a training barrel in it. You could drop a Blade Tech and a couple other companies make these training barrels. But never, ever, ever with a live firearm, even if you think it's unloaded. That's a violation of our safety rules. We don't do that, okay? So here's the deal. You would practice this by setting your partner up at a certain distance where an appropriate extension of the handgun would be your normal extended position, okay? And you may use verbal commands. You may say, get back, just to practice that aspect, get back, or whatever else you want to do. So I'm telling my partner to get back, right? But they continue to walk closer to the point where they violate my distance rule, in which case I would compress the handgun. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, Mike, couldn't I just shoot then? Sure, yeah, you could. Maybe, it depends. It's your choice. Do you have the legal justification? Is this person aggressing you, right? A drunk or mental individual that you at that moment in time choose not to shoot. Or more importantly, a lot of people say, Mike, well, you're an idiot. Just shoot the person. Well, what if, as I'm extending that handgun, there's people panicking and I can see them standing behind this person and maybe a little girl hiding behind kind of a car, right? So I know if I start firing this person, she's right there, right? And I can't move. But the point is, we're practicing the context of these positions. So I may, hey, stop, get back. They walk closer. I go to my compressed position. Remember, muzzle is horizontal to the ground. Gun is high. I'm not down here. Gun is high, below my chin. We can practice firing a shot here. Fire a couple shots. And then they get even closer, and I change my position. Now, of course, you can't imagine this because Bob's not close. I'll bring him closer in a second. To a position where I continue to rotate the gun and retract it as far as I can. I'm literally taking the handgun. I'm pulling it back as far as I can. There's a downward muzzle cant, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then I can use this lead hand to do a bunch of stuff, okay? So let me move Bob closer and talk about that. I need to get a live person or demonstrator for this kind of stuff, I think. So I've got Bob. He's nice and close. So we talked about, right, this position, which would probably be appropriate from here, where I can fire from here, where Bob's arms may be able to get to my handgun, but I'm just out of reach. But he continues to get closer, or we end up contact distance in what one of my buddies calls the butt, the fouled up tangle, right? So we're close. I went from some distance to extremely close. So let me show you how I get there. I transition from here to here, pretty simply, boom, boom, boom. And then from here to close, this is specific. I'm actually going to take my hand and watch how I rotate off of the trigger guard. See how my hand is rotating off the trigger guard and the muzzle comes straight back. So I never got my hand in the way of the muzzle, and then I could take this hand and boom, and I could strike, or I could eye gouge, or I could, believe it or not, I could stiff arm and then keep Bob back. Now you may say, well, this is a better technique. It probably is in a lot of cases. The problem is when you try this with a person, a lot of times if you're already fighting, they're sweaty, they're greasy, they're bloody, or whatever else. If I end up in a position, this hand slides off, now they're inside that arm. I can pretty effectively, stiff arm someone and keep them back for a pretty good period of time. As I'm deciding to shoot, maybe there's an innocent person on the other side of them, or shooting. Literally, I could be shooting at this position. Now, this is exactly why my gun is in a downward angle position. Notice where my gun is lined up with. That's why the gun is in a downward angle. Back to the position. When I do this, I want you to watch how I do this. I am literally rotating off of the trigger guard in a safe manner so I can do that. A lot of times, and I don't even want to do it with a Cool 5 trainer, even though this is a fully converted barrel and I can't shoot. But a lot of times what I see students do is they tend to do this, right? So they tend to muzzle themselves. Now remember, in the middle of this fight, this crazy dynamic fight, the last thing you want to do is be pointing the gun at yourself. You don't want to do that, right? So when I go from this position to this position to keep the person back, so I'm stiff arming and sticking my fingers in his eyes or whatever else, I do it in a safe manner where I could pretty effectively shoot here. I could shoot right there, right? Okay, but if you notice, that's why this hand is up here and the angle of the gun is down here. So what I have two planes of existence. This area where I'm hitting and striking and doing things, maybe stiff arming, whatever else, maybe parrying. I'm just, I'm really intent on keeping this person. I have to keep this person off my gun, if that makes sense, right? And the other plane of existence is where the gun is pointed down here. Now, a lot of, like I said, a lot of people look at this and question, say, man, why are you pointing the gun down? Because at this distance, I don't want to shoot my arm. I'll give you a second thing, by the way. When you're doing this, I can effectively get very, very close and be driving shots down into the pelvic area and groin and lower body at this angle. So if my partner, let's say you're a police officer or maybe your concealed carry buddy or whatever, they're back there, they just took cover, they got distance, maybe your kids are back there, this downward angle for shoot-throughs is a little bit safer position, if that makes any sense, okay? So it's really important you understand these positions. Now, here's what I want you to practice. Let me summarize this, and we'll do some open Q&A, and then I'm going to have to jump off. Number one, I want you to have a person, obviously with a safe training tool, get to a certain distance where an extended position is appropriate. Hey, stop, get back, get back. If they don't get back, be prepared to do this. Then I'm going to transition when they get closer to this position. Muzzle's horizontal to the ground. We call this the high ready position, by the way. It's not a low ready, it's a high ready. So understand there's a difference in position. Remember, muzzle is horizontal to the ground. I don't do a lot of this with my hands. I want to use my body to align the handgun. I don't want to be in the bad habit of having loose wrists. Okay? So that's this position. Hey man, get back. Or maybe you're already shooting, right? Trevor, this is a Glock 19 that's been customized by Wilson Combat. And then you can see the red barrel inside this. This is made by Coolfire Trainer. If you want a training barrel that is absolutely incredible, that's the one you want to get. It allows you to fill up the gun with compressed CO2 and pull the trigger. I also, and by the way, if you go to this event where I have it scheduled, there's a discount code for the Coolfire Trainer, and there's a distance code, or there's a discount code for the SIRT training, because I'm still a fan of SIRT pistols as well, because SIRT and this gun bolt allow you to build these positions, and when you pull the trigger, you actually see the dot, if that makes any sense. Okay. So let me summarize, folks, and then do some Q&A. I got to go in a couple minutes. You're going to practice this. You're going to practice transitioning to this. Aggressive, forward, horizontal, not too close. And then you're going to practice this, right? Basically where you're close quarters and you're stiff arming. I'm going to tell you the trick of the day. This is worth the price of admission, believe it or not, is seeing how effective it is to stiff arm. And what you do is, and you can do this kind of light with a training partner, obviously with a plastic gun or whatever else, like a Coolfire Trainer. What I want you to do is practice stiff arming, boom, literally to the chest. And all I'm doing is, back in football, we were going boom, boom, for those that play football. Maybe everybody didn't play football, right? We're stiff arming and keeping the gun close to our body. I'm literally pulling it all the way back here. By the way, don't forget your thumb creates the mechanical offset between the gun, so the slide still travels, okay? Stiff arm, you can surprisingly keep people back. If you can't see my position, it looks like this. I'm squared up, I'm very strong, I'm using this hand to stiff arm, this is pulled back, this is up, where I could, eye gouge, throat strike, stiff arm, turn the head, but I can still shoot. Number one, the importance of understanding, distance when you draw. I need to have distance between myself and the threat before I access the firearm. I have to have that distance. More importantly, I need time. So we're going to use distance, an obstacle, some sort of combatives technique, or some sort of sneaky tactics to get the gun out. And then number two, we covered three specific positions. The extended position, when it's appropriate, the close quarter, or what I call the high ready position, okay, or when that's appropriate, and then boom, the extreme close quarter, or when that's appropriate, and how to transition from all three of those different positions. Understand that when you're at the extreme close quarter position, we tend to practice this on stationary bobs or paper targets, which is why it's so good to to learn it and do it and interact with someone who is vetted and knows what to do in these things. And by the way, if you want to look at close quarter work and take a close quarter class in terms of not just the shooting positions, but the actual fight itself, there's a way more that goes into it that I can't cover on a live stream. Look up Craig Douglas. Just Google Craig Douglas or Google South Narc. He's the dude that started teaching some of the best courses out there, in my opinion, Probably the best, one of the best instructors in the U.S. that teaches that stuff. So if you get a chance to take his, it'll beat you up a little bit. You're going to get bumped and bruised, but it's worth your time. Okay. There's some local instructors here that teach phenomenal material, but if you're not in the Tulsa area, that doesn't Mike Brown, my buddy Virgil Literal, Brandon Bennett. Some of these guys understand these distance considerations fantastically. Okay. So we covered the 3 different positions and how to flow from position to position next week. And by the way, next week is defensive rifle, and we'll go from there. So if you have a question for me or my buddy Bob, throw it up there. If you have a question, I got to and I got to go, folks. I actually have kids that are outside waiting for the bus. I got to go say hi to them. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you watching. Thank you. We still have 145 people on. So for a Wednesday morning to hit 200 is absolutely fantastic. All right, folks. Say hi to Bob. I'll leave Bob with you for a second. Have a great day. Stay safe.